Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Roland, and thank you for inviting us and allowing us to talk a little bit in the SciTech Research Symposium. Let me go ahead and introduction about myself. Graduated from University of Missouri with bachelor's in science and computer science in 2019. I'm currently a PhD student at the University of Missouri, and some of my research interests include machine learning, human-computer interaction, and explainable AI.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eric Milman. I originally was a teacher, got my MED at Utah State University, then went back to school at Texas Tech in media and communication. I'm working with Dr. Key, and that's how I've begun to collaborate with Roland at Missouri as we're working on this NSF-funded project together. I'm interested in diffusion of innovations, health communications, and media effects.
Awesome. Yeah, so our project, the title is called Developing a COVID-19 Science Gateway with Chatbot Support for Clinicians. So what we're going to do is going to go over the agenda, give you some background information, introduction, motivating works, our solution approach. We're going to introduce a case study that we did and kind of just wrap up there with conclusions. Typically, when we see the rise of cyber infrastructure, it's usually applied for information technology systems, and the idea is that it's processing and collecting and also analyzing large amounts of data, which we have known today to be big data for many use cases, whether it's to do some automation or processing or to do some inferencing, things like that. But what we've studied is that these capabilities have really been leveraged in science gateways for giving users more access to data and resources. So what science gateways are is that they provide these web-based portal interfaces to integrate with scientific tools and data sets using these domain-specific UI customizations. So it's really just kind of hiding all of these complexities under the hood in terms of the cyber infrastructure and providing people with, domain expertise in specific fields, easy to use interfaces so they can interact and kind of perform more of like the knowledge discovery. And we've seen that it's been primarily useful for researchers, data analysts, and also educators. So part of our motivation is that although science gateways have, advanced CI capabilities that has alleviated these data intensive workflows that a lot of research may have, so that being kind of very predefined workflows in which, science gateways are able to alleviate that, there is an issue about the tools and data sets that are rapidly emerging, and also the complexity of the interdisciplinary collaborations and the advanced capabilities in CAI are increasing. So really what we're trying to figure out and trying to assess is that as there is a growing need for both the consumers for science gateways, we want to try to alleviate that by providing a framework. So we've drew up this claim saying that a science gateway has a dynamic ability to provide an agent assistant guidance and monitoring coupled with feedback process to improve functionality for gateway data users has not necessarily been developed yet. So this is kind of what our motivating factor is. And in terms of the actual solution approach, we propose to develop in the midst of developing science gateways, we focus on two contexts. One is being for data providers. So these will be CI developers, administrators who provide kind of these sources to fit the need for consumers in specific science gateways domains. And then we also focus on data consumers, of course. So these are data professionals, researchers who are trying to perform or trying to get sort of this knowledge or do some type of knowledge discovery so that they can, boost their research objectives. With doing all that, we look to power all of this using a context-aware chatbot called Vidura Advisor. So the Videra advisor, in a sense, provides navigational support and guidance for both the consumers and the providers. So it's looking at both areas in which this chatbot can help you find more sources on the provider side, help you orchestrate workflow and things like that when you're providing a lot of the infrastructure, as well as providing consumers on how to navigate certain UIs and things like that. And I guess the use case that we've applied it to is an existing science gateway that that I have helped develop at the University of Missouri called No COVID-19, which I'll go into more later. So a little bit more about the Videra chatbot. So the Videra chatbot is named after a wise advisor in Indian mythology. That's kind of where the name came from, Videra. And really what it does is that it facilitates the successful navigation of science gateways. So it functions as the guide by answering a variety of domain-specific questions and also general questions, whether it be about the UI or, again, just kind of understanding more about the system itself at the very low level. And it also handles the dynamic need from both those providers and consumers through its technical capabilities and natural language processing algorithms. So as you see from the snapshot above, we are using this tool called Google Dialogflow, which does a lot of natural language processing and natural language understanding to really gather the queries of users in order to provide very indicative responses. So, for example, if you look at the snapshot here, they have this thing called intents. So these are kind of the intentions of what users are going to be asking. And they also have entities, really just kind of extracting key information. So from this example, the intent could be if a user were to ask about or to query about the weather, right? So this would be labeled under a forecast intent, which can be created using the Google Dialogflow interface. And from there, you understand that there's many ways to really inquire about the forecast. So you can really say, what's the forecast, or even what's the weather like right now? Or if you want to go even more specifically, like what's the temperature going to be tomorrow in Seattle? So there's many different ways of asking it, but it's really just kind of mapped into one intent, which is generally about forecasts. So what the chatbot or Google Dialogflow does is that it tries to take those intents, train over those intents to essentially just a pre-trained model, and it's able to give kind of these predefined responses based off what the user's query will be. And the entities, as you can see, some of the words that are highlighted in different colors, the entities really try to extract key information, keywords from those questions, and really from the process of it training, really tried to infer what the user is trying to say. So forecast, weather, and temperature will clearly shows that it's part of the forecast intent. So the user's kind of inquiring about the actual weather. But other specific information, if a user were to go more in depth about the question, would be things like right now or tomorrow, which indicate what time is. So that can be another entity that can be defined. And then another one is just location. So it's being, Seattle or wherever place. So that's essentially how we use the chatbot in order to answer specific questions and guide users into using the system, whether it being the interface or the actual infrastructure part. So in terms of our case study, we've looked to leverage this tool for in a particular science gateway in the context of COVID-19. So typically, one of the issues with COVID-19, specifically for clinicians and researchers and other health practitioners, is that you have a voluminous amount of data coming in, and it's really hard to keep up with this amount of data in terms of literature in order to produce a well quality publication. So the process of extracting high quality information from their end can be very time expensive and or it would be expensive and time consuming. And currently there are no frameworks that provide sort of this automated literature review in accordance to evidence-based practice in which they study for COVID-19 specifically. So what we've understood with collaborating with a couple of clinicians is that researchers typically evaluate and synthesize high quality information using this hierarchical pyramid called the level of evidence, which is very key in kind of this evidence-based research as they're looking at sort of the design types. So it works in a pyramid in a sense that when you have background information, you have lots of papers, right? You have a full pool of papers about general information about COVID-19 and things like that. But as you work your way up the pyramid, the design study typically is a little bit more rigorous. And therefore, because it has high quality, there's less papers in that area. So that's kind of showing the way it's structured. So systematic reviews and meta-analysis, for example, would be the highest quality of evidence. And that's something that maybe some researchers, in terms of identifying the research questions or objectives, maybe that's important to them, or maybe looking at randomized control trials is also important to them. But what this Science Gateway tries to do is that it provides an automated publication analytics to help consumers sort through high quality documents according to this pyramid. So the image below shows a step-by-step process in which users are able to key in on what high quality papers they can look for. So the step one is picking a specific level here. And step two, we've done essentially kind of this pre-training on the way we can actually produce key words across the whole data set that we've collected. Typically that's done using topic modeling algorithms. So if you think, for an example, if you have a text regarding, let's say, sports, and another one over like food, for example, a topic modeling algorithm which we're using is able to identify what are those keywords in order within each document in order for it to provide a very good classification. So for example, like with sports could be like, win, goal, like touchdown, things like that. Whereas like food can be in terms of like taste, fruits, apples, things like that. Kind of those keywords that allow users to look at certain trends and look at what's really important for them to view as they're looking to filter according to the level of evidence. So using the Science Gateway and the Videra chatbot, we look to use this chatbot on top of, in the context of the consumer side, on how we can use the chatbot to answer specific questions or to guide users into finding a more in-depth analysis. While No COVID-19 presents the idea of filtering out information, it may be difficult or hard to assess which levels that you want to look at based off your question if you're not too familiar with the service. So what the chatbot does is that, again, it works with you to provide very, very in-depth answers based off any clinical queries that you may have, so you can get more information. And the way it works is that it's connected through this, RESTful API that uses, again, this pre-trained Google Dialogflow model. And on the right, you can see more of this recommender response generator that can give you responses about a wide variety of things, such as the level of evidence, things like clinical categories, and things like that. So I will pass it on to Eric to talk about the qualitative study.
All right, so to kind of help us develop No COVID-19 in a way that would be useful to clinicians, what we've been doing is performing a qualitative study to, again, capture the current research workflow process that clinicians and researchers currently use. Basically, we ask them what, when they're approaching a study, what resources they turn to, and kind of how successful they are with these things, and maybe what the limitations are. We've also gathered information about their suggestions on using the No COVID-19 Science Gateway and the Videra assisted chatbot. These questions, again, we kind of give them a similar spiel that we just gave you guys in order to get their feedback to know, okay, well, what sounds good about this? What do you think could be improved? That type of thing. What we're finding so far is that the clinicians really appreciate the aspect of a Science Gateway that can facilitate filtering papers based on levels of evidence, because a lot of their concerns is that it's kind of a time-consuming thing to filter through papers. And even if they have a go-to journal that they go to, it won't necessarily cover all the subjects that they may be interested in covering. So No COVID-19 could really assist them in that way. what we're finding in regards to the Vidura chatbot is that while some are open to it, some are a little hesitant to use a chatbot just because they've had experiences in the past where the chatbot has maybe not performed as well as they would have liked. So we're really focusing on being able to update Vidura in a way that through this Google Dialog flow that will be most helpful to them and will not necessitate them having to run through things again one more time with the chatbot, only to have to turn to like another person to help them beyond that. We want Vidura to be able to accomplish everything it needs to do for them. So the participants that in this preliminary study that we've done, we're doing 10 interviews, including clinicians, veterinary doctors, medical researchers, and biochemists. All participants who were interviewed believed that they would recommend a science gateway such as No COVID-19. And again, as I just said, most would recommend using the chatbot so long as it works effectively. And to conclude, research helps alleviate the growing need of clinicians and researchers to keep up with the latest tools and data sets. Again, clinicians especially are, obviously, they spend a lot of their time with bedside care. So when they want to do research in order to help their patients or to contribute to the literature, the more we can do to facilitate the research process and to speed it up will be very helpful to them, because their scarcest resource is time. So proposing science gateways that handle the needs from data providers and data consumers through a context where chatbots such as Vidura Advisor will hopefully further assist with this, given that it's quite expensive to maintain somebody on site who can help answer all the queries that a person might have. If a chatbot can do this, it would be way cheaper and way faster. And then applied to a COVID-19 related science gateway called No COVID-19 and gathered interest from clinical researchers and healthcare practitioners. This is what we've done to kind of assess how Vidura could be best used. And again, really what clinicians in this area would want to see. In terms of future work, we're going to be working on phase 2, where we will conduct a usability assessment of No COVID-19 and the Vidura Advisor. Basically, we'll have integrated many of the suggestions that the clinicians in our current qualitative study have given us, both in terms of the Science Gateway and in terms of Vidura. And we'll kind of run through the Science Gateway with them in order to see how easy it is to access, kind of how intuitive it is, and whether the information we get from it is helpful. We'll also integrate a systematic framework that explores and analyzes the efficiency of Vidura, the chatbot.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Eric and Roland. Any questions for them? So while people are thinking, I have one quick question that I'm curious. So I really like the pyramid thing that you showed. It's very nice. One question in there, it's because you mentioned you have different keywords, topics for each of the levels. So how are you determining, these keywords and these topics related to the documents that you're finding? So you do it manually right now? Are you doing some web scraping to find the documents, do some sensitive analysis to figure out what is the relation about that word to other words in the document? How are you applying that right now?
Yeah, so we really collected it from, so the Kaggle data set has provided this COVID-19 open research data set, which is really just kind of like a bunch of sources that have been used from like, I guess, many institutions in which they can kind of promote challenges. But from there, our topic modeling algorithms assesses the whole data set in itself. So really, it's more about understanding the different topics in between the full data set and choosing those topics. It's really just more of just like, in terms of the relation between the actual level itself, it's really more of like a filtering mechanism between what are those keywords that are presented in the pool of papers in the specific level and the level of evidence.